What if I told you that in the cold, ruthless world of corporate giants, the most powerful asset isn't a patent, a product, or even the CEO himself? What if I told you that the single most valuable thing could be a simple act of kindness? Most people would say that's a naive belief, that niceness gets you trampled. This story is here to prove them wrong and to show how a simple secretary shows kindness to her company's new janitor, and his final reaction left her utterly speechless. Have you ever felt invisible at your job? Like you pour your heart into your work, but no one seems to notice? Or even worse, have you ever been publicly humiliated or blamed for something you didn't do? It's a painful, isolating feeling that too many of us know. This story is for every single person who has felt that sting. It's a story about the ultimate redemption and a reminder that destiny has a funny way of delivering justice when you least expect it. In this corner, we have Kelly Brooklyn, a brilliant, hardworking secretary, struggling to get by, who feels more like a ghost in the hallways than a person. She's armed with little more than her integrity and a heart-aching capacity for kindness. And in the other corner, we have Aaron King, the powerful, enigmatic CEO of a massive empire. So tired of the fakeness surrounding him, he concocts a secret plan to go undercover in his own company as a humble janitor to find the one thing he can't buy: truth. Their two worlds were never supposed to collide, but they do, over a simple smile and a word of encouragement. That single moment kicks off an incredible chain of events, an unexpected love story, a shocking plot twist, and a moment of surprise so powerful it will change their lives forever. You are about to witness what happens when the most overlooked person in the building shows kindness to the most powerful person in disguise. So before we dive into this incredible, emotional story, we want to know where you're watching from. Drop your city and country in the comments below. Let's see how far this story has traveled. And if you believe in the power of kindness, go ahead and give this video a like. Be sure to follow our channel so you don't miss what's next. And please, share this with one person who you think needs to see it. Let's get into it. In the heart of a skyscraper made of glass and steel, where ambition was the very air people breathed, worked a gentle soul. Kelly Brooklyn, an efficient secretary, was a soft note in a loud, aggressive business symphony. Her world was a whirlwind of schedules, emails, and endless requests, yet she navigated it all with a quiet grace that was rare. What nobody knew was that one act of pure kindness was about to seal her destiny, setting off a chain of events that would lead to an unbelievable plot twist and a final reaction that would leave her utterly speechless. Suddenly, a new face appeared in the immaculate corridors, one that most people chose to simply ignore. He was the new janitor, a quiet man with eyes that seemed to see more than just dust and trash. To the hurried executives and gossiping staff, he was just part of the scenery, entirely invisible. But what they didn't know was that he held a monumental secret. This was no ordinary man. This was the CEO, Aaron King, on a mission to uncover the true character of his company, and every act of kindness or contempt was being carefully noted. While others breezed past him with their noses in the air, Kelly was different. Every single morning, without fail, she would greet him with a genuine smile and a good morning that seemed to light up the sterile hallway. It wasn't forced, it wasn't out of pity, it was simply who she was. It was a small gesture, a drop of kindness in an ocean of indifference, but to the disguised janitor, it was louder than any profit report. It was a truly heart-aching interaction that took him by complete surprise. Aaron King, the powerful CEO, felt something stir within him. He was accustomed to flattery and falsehood, so Kelly's sincerity was a breath of fresh air. He began to look forward to that morning smile, a small beacon of humanity in his corporate experiment. The unassuming secretary had no idea her simple act of decency was being observed by the one man who held the power to change her life forever. She just saw a fellow human being and treated him with the respect he deserved. unaware that his final reaction would change everything. This daily interaction began to form the foundation of a silent, emotional connection. It was the quiet beginning of an unconventional love story, one not built on fancy dinners or grand gestures, but on moments of pure, unadulterated humanity. Destiny was at work in its most mysterious ways, weaving together the threads of a secretary and a CEO. He knew the revelation of his secret would be a plot twist for everyone, but especially for her, the one person who saw him when no one else did. The curtain was only just beginning to rise on this corporate drama. The stage was being set for a series of events that would test character, reveal truth, and culminate in a moment that would leave not just Kelly, but the entire corporation absolutely speechless. Her simple kindness had planted a seed, and she had no idea just how powerful the harvest would be, or how the janitor's final surprise reaction would redefine her world in a way she could never imagine. Kelly Brooklyn was the quintessential diligent secretary, the invisible engine that kept her department running smoothly. She managed calendars with precision, handled calls with unwavering politeness, and organized chaos into order, all for a paycheck that barely covered her bills. She was often overlooked, her contributions taken for granted, a familiar story for many who worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Yet, through it all, she never lost her core of kindness, a trait that seemed almost out of place in such a competitive environment. It was a heart-aching display of resilience. Her life was a constant struggle to make ends meet, a reality she kept as her own private secret. While her colleagues discussed lavish vacations and designer clothes, Kelly meticulously planned her budget to afford rent and groceries. This struggle, however, never soured her disposition. In fact, it seemed to deepen her empathy for others, especially for those in service roles who, like her, were often rendered invisible. Her respect for the new janitor wasn't an exception. It was her rule, a fundamental part of her character. Day after day, she felt the sting of being unappreciated, sometimes feeling humiliated by the casual condescension of her superiors. They saw a secretary, a function, not a person with dreams and aspirations, but Kelly possessed a quiet strength. She refused to let their dismissiveness define her worth. This inner dignity was her shield, protecting that precious kindness from the cynicism that surrounded her. It was a silent battle she fought and won every single day, completely unaware that a powerful ally was watching. This quiet dignity was precisely what caught the attention of the undercover CEO. He saw past the job title and the modest clothes. He saw a resilience that was more valuable than any stock option. Her consistent decency, even when she had every reason to be bitter, was a surprise that fascinated him. He saw her not as an employee, but as a person of immense integrity. It was the beginning of an emotional bond she knew nothing about, a destiny taking shape. She continued her routine, a beacon of warmth in the cold corporate structure. Her interactions were genuine, her smile was real, and her kindness was a constant currency she shared freely with everyone, regardless of their status. The stark contrast between her and her colleagues was becoming increasingly clear to Aaron King. He saw her as the soul of the company, a secret treasure hidden in plain sight, and the injustice of her being overlooked began to stir a protective instinct in him. Little did Kelly know, her simple, respectful existence was becoming the central focus of the CEO's investigation. Her every move, every word of kindness, was being recorded in the mind of the most powerful man in the building. Her life, which she felt was so small and insignificant, was about to collide with a world of power and influence, setting the stage for a plot twist that would change her destiny forever. The love story had its foundation. Aaron King wasn't your typical CEO. He had inherited a global empire built by his father, a kingdom of commerce that spanned continents. But from his throne of power, he felt a growing disconnect. He was surrounded by yesmen and corporate sharks who told him only what he wanted to hear. He craved truth, authenticity, something real in a world constructed of flattery and deceit. This hunger for the genuine led him to devise a radical plan, a deeply held secret known only to his most trusted advisor. He decided to go undercover, not as a mid-level manager or a new intern, but as someone truly invisible, a janitor. It was a bold, almost insane idea, but Aaron was desperate. He wanted to see his company from the ground up, to observe his employees when their guards were down, to witness their true character, not the polished performance they put on for the boss. He traded his tailored suits for a humble uniform, his corner office for a janitor's closet, all for this singular purpose. His initial days were a harsh awakening. He experienced firsthand the casual disdain, the dismissive glances, and the utter invisibility that came with his new role. People who would normally scramble for his approval didn't even make eye contact. He was no longer Aaron King, the mighty CEO. He was just the help, a ghost in the machine he himself had built. This experience, though jarring, was exactly what he was looking for. It was a raw, unfiltered look into the soul of his organization. And frankly, it was disappointing. This entire charade was a high-stakes test. He wasn't just looking for problems, he was looking for potential, for pockets of integrity in a sea of ambition. He wanted to find the employees who were intrinsically good, whose kindness wasn't a strategy but a reflex. He believed that such people were the true foundation of any lasting enterprise, a secret ingredient to success that couldn't be quantified on a balance sheet. His quest was becoming a deeply emotional journey. And then he met Kelly Brooklyn. Amidst the general indifference, her simple, warm greeting was a surprise that struck him like a bolt of lightning. She didn't see a janitor, she saw a person. She didn't offer pity, she offered respect. In that small, heart-aching moment, Aaron felt he had found what he was looking for. This secretary, who seemed so ordinary on the surface, might just be the most extraordinary person in his entire empire. The powerful CEO, disguised as the lowest-ranking employee, found himself intrigued. His mission, which had started as a corporate audit of character, was now becoming intensely personal. He had set out to observe his company, but he was now focused entirely on one secretary whose simple decency challenged everything he thought he knew about his world. Her kindness was an anomaly, a beautiful plot twist in his carefully constructed experiment, unknowingly writing the first chapter of their love story. The days turned into a week, and a clear pattern emerged for Aaron King. While trudging through the hallways with his cart, he became a social experiment in motion. Executives would stride past, barking into their phones, not even acknowledging his existence. Junior employees would sometimes offer a tight, uncomfortable smirk, while others would openly mock his work, leaving messes for him to clean. The janitor was a nobody, and they made sure he felt it. It was a disheartening, daily dose of reality about the culture he presided over as CEO. But then there was Kelly. Every morning, like clockwork, her desk was the one place he was guaranteed a moment of genuine human connection. "Good morning, Aaron," she'd say, using his fake name with a warmth that was entirely real. Her smile wasn't for show, it was a heart-aching gift she gave freely. To him, it felt like the only source of light in the building. This simple act of kindness from the secretary was the one thing that kept his growing cynicism at bay. He started observing her more closely. He saw how she treated everyone with the same level of respect, from the mailroom clerk to the vice presidents. She was a constant, a pillar of decency in a cutthroat environment. While others jockeyed for position and backstabbed their way up the ladder, Kelly just did her job with integrity. This wasn't a secret, it was just that nobody in power had ever bothered to look closely enough to appreciate it. But Aaron, the disguised CEO, was looking. The contrast was staggering. One afternoon, he overheard two managers laughing about the old janitor, making cruel jokes about his life. The casual cruelty was a punch to the gut. Moments later, Kelly walked by that same spot, saw a small piece of trash he had missed, and discreetly picked it up herself instead of complaining. This small, unnoticed act spoke volumes. It was an emotional moment for Aaron, a testament to her true character. He realized he was starting to feel something more than just professional admiration. He was developing a deep respect, a fondness for this woman he barely knew. Her consistent kindness was a surprise that was slowly evolving into something much deeper, the foundation of a love story he never expected. He, the powerful CEO, was falling for the humble secretary, all while pretending to be the company janitor. It was a plot twist in his own life. This daily greeting, this unwavering respect, became the highlight of Aaron's undercover mission. It was the data point that mattered more than all the others combined. He came to see the true nature of his employees, but more importantly, he found a diamond in the rough. He now knew for a fact that Kelly Brooklyn was special. What he didn't know yet was just how brave she could be, and she was about to show him. One evening, as the office was emptying out, a storm erupted in the usually quiet corridor. Mr. Davies, Kelly's arrogant and overbearing manager, cornered Aaron by his cart. He began to berate him, his voice dripping with condescension, over a tiny, insignificant smudge on the floor near his office door. He was loud, aggressive, and clearly enjoying the power trip, publicly humiliating the lowly janitor. Aaron remained silent, his jaw tight, his secret identity making it impossible to retort as the CEO he was. Kelly Brooklyn was just about to leave for the day when she heard the commotion. Peeking around the corner, she saw the scene unfold. Her heart sank as she watched Mr. Davies tear into the quiet janitor, a man who had only ever shown diligence and humility. Other employees who were still around quickly looked away, pretending not to notice, wanting no part of the manager's wrath. But Kelly couldn't turn a blind eye. It went against every fiber of her being. With a deep breath, she walked forward, her posture straight despite the fear churning in her stomach. "Mr. Davies," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I'm sure it was just an oversight. There's no need to speak to him that way." The manager turned, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. Who was this secretary to challenge him? For a moment, everyone was speechless. It was a brave, reckless act. Defending the janitor was career. Suicide in the eyes of a man like Davies. Aaron stood in stunned silence. He had expected to be humiliated, but he had never expected a rescue. He watched as Kelly, the quiet and overlooked secretary, stood up to her own boss to defend him. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated courage. This wasn't just kindness, this was a fierce display of integrity. The surprise of her action sent a powerful emotional jolt through him. In that moment, his admiration for her skyrocketed into something far more profound. Davies, caught off guard, scoffed and told Kelly to mind her own business before storming off, but the impact of her action lingered in the air. She turned to Aaron, a concerned look on her face, and simply said, "Are you okay? No one deserves to be treated like that." It was a heart-aching gesture of solidarity. She had risked her job for him, a man she believed to be a simple janitor. This single act of bravery confirmed everything Aaron was beginning to believe about her. He knew, then and there, that this was more than just an observation. This was destiny. The way she defended him, the strength she showed it, was the mark of a true leader, not just a secretary. His reaction was a quiet, internal vow to ensure her courage would not go unrewarded. A major plot twist was now in motion, and Mr. Davies had just made the biggest mistake of his career, setting the stage for his own downfall and Kelly's eventual redemption. Deeply moved and utterly intrigued by Kelly's bravery, Aaron felt an overwhelming urge to do something for her. He couldn't reveal his secret identity as the CEO, not yet. The experiment wasn't over, but he could no longer remain a passive observer, a simple janitor in her eyes. He wanted to give back a piece of the kindness she so freely offered, to bring a small bit of joy into her seemingly stressful life. So he decided to become her anonymous benefactor. The next morning, a fresh, hot coffee from her favorite cafe appeared on her desk before she arrived. There was no note, no explanation. Kelly, the ever-practical secretary, was puzzled but assumed a coworker had done it as a kind gesture. The surprise brought a small, genuine smile to her face, a smile that Aaron watched from a distance as he polished the floors. It was a simple act, but it felt incredibly rewarding. The anonymous gifts continued. One day, it was a single, rare, flowering exotic orchid placed in a simple glass on her desk. Another day, it was a gourmet chocolate bar she had once mentioned, loving to a colleague. Each gift was small, thoughtful, and untraceable. Kelly was baffled. Her colleagues were just as clueless. The mystery of the secret admirer became a light-hearted topic of office gossip, a small romantic puzzle in their corporate world. She, of course, had no idea that the janitor she had defended was the one orchestrating these heart-aching moments. She would sometimes see him in the hallways and give him her usual warm smile, completely oblivious to the fact that he was the source of her daily surprise. This growing, one-sided love story was Aaron's most guarded secret, a deeply emotional connection he was nurturing from the shadows. He was the powerful CEO, yet these small acts made him feel more fulfilled than any multi-million-dollar deal. For Kelly, these gifts were more than just objects. They were affirmations. In a world where she often felt invisible and humiliated by her manager, these gestures made her feel seen and appreciated. They were a balm to her spirit, a sign that someone, somewhere noticed her. She cherished each one, never suspecting the plot twist behind them, that they came from the man she believed was at the very bottom of the company's hierarchy. Aaron knew he was playing a dangerous game. This went far beyond his initial mission. But he couldn't stop. Seeing her quiet joy was addictive. It was a pure, simple reaction that he craved. He was weaving a thread of destiny between them, a connection built on anonymous kindness and a profound secret. But this gentle budding romance was about to be violently interrupted by the cruelty of a manager desperate to protect his own ego. Mr. Davies had not forgotten Kelly's defiance. The fact that a mere secretary had challenged him, especially in defense of a janitor, was a deep wound to his fragile ego. He seethed for days, looking for an opportunity to reassert his dominance and put her back in her place. He was a man who thrived on making others feel small, and he had decided that Kelly Brooklyn would be his next target. Her act of kindness would not go unpunished. The opportunity came in the form of a major project proposal for which Davies was responsible. Panicked by a looming deadline he had procrastinated on, he made a critical error in the budget calculations, an error worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. When the mistake was discovered by the finance department, he didn't hesitate. He knew exactly who to blame. He would pin the entire fiasco on the one person who couldn't easily fight back. He called an impromptu departmental meeting. In front of all her colleagues, Davies publicly accused Kelly of gross incompetence. He claimed he had delegated the budget calculations to her, and that her carelessness was to blame for the massive error. He presented falsified emails as proof. Kelly stood there, completely blindsided, her face pale with shock. She was utterly speechless, humiliated in front of everyone she worked with. It was a brutal, calculated act of professional assassination. The room was thick with tension. Some colleagues looked down at their feet in shame, knowing Davies was lying but too afraid to speak up. Others watched with a cold detachment. Kelly looked around for support, but found none. In that moment, she was completely alone, the target of a lie so big it threatened to destroy her career and reputation. The surprise of the betrayal was devastating, a deeply emotional and painful blow. From the other side of the room, where he was pretending to empty the trash cans, Aaron watched the entire scene unfold. His blood boiled with a cold fury. He saw the reaction on Kelly's face, the shock, the hurt, the quiet dignity with which she absorbed the attack without breaking down. He saw the cowardice of her colleagues and the smug triumph on her manager's face. He, the CEO, was witnessing the ugliest side of his own company's culture. This was no longer a simple test. This was a war for the soul of his company. The injustice of it all was staggering. Kelly, the embodiment of integrity and kindness, was being sacrificed to cover for a fraudulent manager. Her redemption was no longer just a desire for Aaron, it had become his absolute mission. He knew the secret truth, and a plot twist of epic proportions was about to be set in motion. Davies had just signed his own termination papers. As Kelly stood there, publicly humiliated and falsely accused, she didn't lash out. She didn't break down into hysterical tears. Instead, a quiet, steely dignity settled over her. She simply looked Mr. Davies in the eye and said, "That is not true," her voice trembling but firm. In the face of overwhelming injustice, her first instinct was not anger, but a profound, unwavering adherence to the truth. Her quiet strength left many in the room, including Aaron, momentarily speechless. Watching from the shadows, Aaron King felt a connection to her that was seismic. It was a bond that had nothing to do with his role as CEO or hers as a secretary. It transcended wealth, power, and corporate hierarchy. In that moment, he saw her soul, and it was the strongest, most beautiful thing he had ever witnessed. This wasn't just a love story blooming, it was a profound emotional recognition of a kindred spirit. Destiny had never felt more real. He felt a deep, protective rage on her behalf, but it was mixed with an overwhelming sense of awe. Her character, tested by fire, had proven to be pure gold. While his world was filled with people who would sell their integrity for a promotion, Kelly wouldn't surrender hers even when faced with professional ruin. This quiet dignity was her superpower, a secret weapon against the cruelty of the world. It was a heart-aching display of inner strength. The meeting concluded with Davies smugly placing Kelly on probation, a clear step towards firing her. She walked back to her desk, head held high, though Aaron could see the deep pain in her eyes. The injustice of it all was a heavy weight in the air. He knew he could step in right then and there, reveal his identity, and unleash a storm of redemption. But the timing wasn't right. To truly honor her, the plot twist had to be perfect. He understood now that his initial mission to find good employees had been too small a goal. Kelly wasn't just a good employee, she was the moral compass the entire corporation desperately needed. His feelings for her had solidified into something unbreakable. He was in love with her character, with her spirit, with the quiet courage she showed in her darkest moment. The surprise was how deeply this janitor persona had allowed him to see the real her. He knew he had to act, but not as a CEO descending from on high. First, he had to connect with her on a human level, as Aaron the janitor, the one person she might feel she could trust. His reaction to her being humiliated was not to display power, but to offer comfort. He needed to understand her pain, to hear her story from her own lips, before he orchestrated the ultimate corporate reckoning. Later that day, Aaron found Kelly in a quiet, forgotten break room, staring blankly out the window. She looked defeated, the weight of the day's events pressing down on her. He approached cautiously, not as the CEO, but as Aaron, the friendly janitor she had defended. "Tough day, huh?" he said softly, his voice full of the genuine sympathy she could feel. It was the first bit of kindness she had received since being humiliated. To his surprise, she didn't brush him off. Instead, she looked at him, the man she saw as a fellow traveler on the bottom rung of the corporate ladder, and her carefully constructed composure began to crumble. She started to talk, a quiet torrent of words. She confided in him, telling him her dreams of being more than just a secretary, of making a real difference, of using her skills for something meaningful. It was a deeply emotional and heart-aching confession. She told him how invisible she felt, how her hard work was always claimed by others, and how this latest accusation was the most painful blow yet. "It's like I'm a ghost here," she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. "I just wanted to work hard and be a good person. Is that not enough?" She was sharing her deepest secret pains and insecurities with him, the one person she felt was safe, the humble janitor who couldn't possibly judge her. Aaron listened, his heart aching for her. The irony was almost too much to bear. She was confiding in the single most powerful person in her world, the one man who could change her entire life with a single sentence. This was a plot twist of destiny, a moment of raw, unfiltered truth that he would cherish forever. He wasn't just gathering information anymore, he was receiving a sacred trust, and he vowed not to break it. He offered her simple words of comfort, telling her that he saw her, that he knew she was a good person, and that integrity was worth more than any job title. It was all he could offer as the janitor, but it seemed to be exactly what she needed to hear. A small, sad smile touched her lips. She thanked him for listening, for being a friend. The love story between them deepened in that shared moment of vulnerability, even though only one of them knew the full story. As he walked away, leaving her with a renewed glimmer of hope, Erin's resolve hardened into steel. She thought she was speaking to a janitor, but she was actually speaking her truth directly to the CEO. She had given him the final piece of the puzzle. Her redemption was coming. The entire company was about to witness a reaction from its leader. That would leave them all speechless, and it would all be because a secretary had the courage to be kind and the vulnerability to be real. After his emotional conversation with Kelly, Aaron King returned not to the janitor's closet, but to his real life. He went home to his sprawling penthouse apartment overlooking the city, a world of sterile luxury and immense power. He took off the janitor's uniform and stood in his expensive suit, but for the first time, the uniform felt more real. He looked at his world of corporate sharks, of ruthless ambition and backdoor dealings, and he felt a profound sense of emptiness. He realized with startling clarity that his entire empire, this vast machine of profit and power, was missing the most critical component. It had brilliant minds, aggressive strategies, and cutting-edge technology, but it lacked a soul. It lacked the one thing that the overlooked secretary, Kelly Brooklyn, had: an absolute abundance integrity. Her unwavering kindness and honesty were not just personality traits, they were an asset more valuable than anything on his company's balance sheet. This was the ultimate surprise of his undercover mission. He had started it as a CEO trying to find flaws in his workforce. He was ending it as a man who had found the moral center he didn't even know he was looking for. Kelly's simple, heart-aching decency had exposed the spiritual bankruptcy of his corporate culture. He saw with certainty that the path his company was on, rewarding people like Davies, while ignoring people like Kelly, was a path to long-term ruin. He understood that true strength wasn't about humiliating others, as her manager did. It was about having the courage to be kind in a world that often rewards cruelty. Kelly's reaction to injustice, her quiet dignity, was a lesson in leadership more powerful than any book he had ever read. This realization was his redemption, to a redemption from the cynical, detached perspective of a billionaire CEO. It was a plot twist in his own character development. He made a decision. It was time to end the secret. It was time to stop observing and start acting. He would no longer be a passive witness to the drama. He would be the instrument of destiny. He would not just save Kelly, he would elevate her. He would show his entire company what he truly valued, and it would be a shock to the system, an emotional recalibration of their entire corporate ethos. The plan began to form in his mind, a strategy not for a corporate takeover, but for a moral one. He would let the villain of this story, Mr. Davies, make one final fatal move. He knew the manager's arrogance would be his undoing. Aaron would use that arrogance as the stage for the final act, a corporate spectacle that would leave everyone, especially Kelly, completely speechless, and set the stage for a new kind of love story within his company's walls. Just as Aaron predicted, Mr. Davies couldn't leave well enough alone. The fact that Kelly Brooklyn still walked the halls, even on probation, was an insult to his authority. He needed her gone. He needed to make an example of her to ensure no other secretary, or anyone else for that matter, would ever dare to question him again. His ego demanded her complete and utter defeat. He was determined to see her humiliated one last time by being fired, so he escalated his scheme. He spent the next 2 days fabricating a dossier of incompetence against her. He created false performance reviews, documented non-existent tardiness, and even forged witness statements from other employees, pressuring them into silence. It was a meticulous, cold-blooded effort to destroy her career, all to cover the tracks of his own mistake and punish her for her act of kindness toward the janitor. With his file of lies complete, he scheduled a formal termination meeting with Human Resources. He presented his evidence with a confident smirk, painting a picture of Kelly as a hopelessly inept secretary who had become a liability to the company. It was a masterful performance of deceit, designed to leave HR with no other choice but to approve her dismissal. The secret of his own failure would be buried with her career. He felt a surge of triumph. He had won. He had silenced the one person who dared to stand up to him. He imagined the look on her face when she would be told to pack her desk. He savored the thought of her final humiliation, a reaction of defeat that would feed his sense of power. He believed he was tying up a loose end, securing his position within the company. He had no idea he was actually tying the knot on his own corporate noose. But he had overlooked one crucial detail: the janitor. In his arrogance, Davies had completely dismissed Aaron as an irrelevant, invisible part of the building. He never once considered that the man he had berated, the man Kelly had defended, had been watching his every move. Aaron, the undercover CEO, was fully aware of the manager's plot, and he was ready to unleash a surprise of his own. Davies had presented his falsified evidence, sealing his official story. The trap was now set. The manager believed he was the hunter, closing in for the kill. He was oblivious to the fact that he was the prey and the real predator. A CEO armed with the truth and a plan for redemption was about to reveal a plot twist that would change the destiny of everyone involved. The stage was set for an unforgettable finale. The termination meeting was set for the following afternoon. Mr. Davies was confident, believing his falsified file was airtight. What he didn't know was that in his haste to create fake evidence, he had shredded the original documents that showed his own calculations and signature on the failed project budget. He had tossed the shredded strips into the confidential waste bin, assuming they would be incinerated, his secret safe forever. It was a fatal oversight. That morning, Aaron King, in his janitor uniform, made his rounds. He purposefully guided his cleaning cart towards the manager's section. As he approached Davies' office, he accidentally tripped, sending his large trash can tumbling over. The contents spilled across the pristine floor right in front of the main walkway, creating a mess that several employees, including a senior HR representative on her way to a meeting, couldn't help but notice. Amidst the coffee grounds and discarded papers were thousands of thin, shredded strips of paper from the confidential bin. "Oh my goodness, I am so sorry," Aaron exclaimed, playing the part of the clumsy janitor to perfection. He began frantically trying to clean up the mess. But as he did, the HR representative paused, her eyes narrowing on the pile of shreds. Something about them, mixed with her knowledge of the upcoming termination meeting, sparked her suspicion. She knelt down, picking up a few of the strips. One had a piece of Davies' signature. Another had numbers that matched the flawed budget report. It was a plot twist happening in real time. The accident had revealed the very evidence Davies had tried to destroy. The HR rep, a woman of integrity, gathered a handful of the shreds, her expression grim. The surprise reaction on her face told Aaron his plan had worked flawlessly. This was Kelly Brooklyn's redemption, delivered not by a CEO's decree, but by a clumsy janitor's spill. It was a heart-aching moment of poetic justice. Davies' attempt to see Kelly humiliated and fired had literally been turned into trash, exposed for all to see. The shredded documents were the key to unraveling his entire web of lies, and now they were in the right hands. Aaron watched as the HR representative walked away, a new determination in her stride. His seemingly insignificant act had changed the entire game. He had planted the seed of doubt and provided the proof needed to exonerate the innocent secretary. He knew this evidence would cause chaos behind the scenes, perfectly setting the stage for the grand public reveal he was planning. The destiny of Kelly and her manager was now irrevocably altered. With the evidence of the manager's deceit now secretly in the hands of HR, Aaron King set the final act of his plan into motion. Working discreetly through his most trusted advisor, he, the CEO, arranged for a massive company-wide town hall meeting to be held the very next day. The official reason was to announce a new strategic initiative, a plausible excuse that disguised the event's true, explosive purpose. Attendance was mandatory for all employees from the top executives to the administrative staff. An email was sent out and a specific directive was included. Certain individuals, including all members of Mr. Davies' department, were required to sit in the front rows. This ensured that Kelly Brooklyn, the unassuming secretary, would have a front row seat to the dramatic events that were about to unfold. She received the invitation with a sense of dread, assuming it was just another corporate obligation to endure while her career hung by a thread. The entire company was buzzing with speculation. A mandatory, all-hands meeting called with such short notice was unusual. Rumors flew through the office. Was there a merger? A massive layoff? No one knew the secret agenda. Aaron, still occasionally seen pushing his janitor cart through the halls, watched the rising anticipation with a quiet sense of satisfaction. The stage for the ultimate surprise was being perfectly set. Kelly felt a knot of anxiety in her stomach. Being forced to attend a public meeting felt like another opportunity to be humiliated. She just wanted to be invisible, to ride out her probation in peace. She had no idea that this meeting was not her doom, but her destiny. It had been orchestrated for the sole purpose of her redemption. The CEO was pulling the strings to ensure that justice would not only be done, but would be seen to be done by everyone. Mr. Davies, on the other hand, felt a surge of pride. He assumed the meeting was to praise his department's recent successes. He was completely unaware that HR was now investigating him, or that the janitor he scorned was the architect of his downfall. His arrogance blinded him to the impending plot twist. He saw the meeting as a platform to solidify his own importance, a chance to shine in front of the entire company, including the CEO. As the employees filed into the large auditorium, atmosphere was electric with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Kelly found her assigned seat in the front, feeling small and exposed. Aaron, his janitor days officially over, prepared himself backstage. This meeting would be an emotional roller coaster, culminating in a reaction that would leave hundreds of people, especially one honest secretary, completely and utterly speechless. The meeting began with standard corporate fanfare. The chief operating officer took the stage, talking about quarterly results and future goals. Then, he moved on to recognizing outstanding achievements. He began to speak about a recent successful project, one that had secured a major new client. He praised the strategic brilliance and flawless execution of the project leader. To Kelly's utter disbelief and horror, he called out Mr. Davies' name. A wave of nausea washed over Kelly. It was the very project she had poured her heart and soul into. She had worked late nights, weekends, doing all the research and drafting. The entire proposal. Davies had simply put his name on it at the end. It was her secret contribution, one she never expected credit for, but seeing him praised for it so publicly felt like a physical blow. It was the ultimate professional injustice, a deeply emotional moment of erasure. Mr. Davies stood up, beaming, and walked towards the stage to a round of applause. He shook hands with the coup, accepting the praise with a smug, self-satisfied grin. From her front row seat, Kelly watched the scene, feeling more invisible and humiliated than ever before. To be falsely accused of a major error was one thing, but to watch her hard work be celebrated as another's triumph was a unique and heart-aching kind of pain. The audience, unaware of the plot twist brewing, clapped politely. They saw a successful manager being rewarded. They didn't see the diligent secretary in the front row whose spirit was being crushed. They didn't know the truth. But one person did. Backstage, Aaron King watched the scene on a monitor, his expression hardening. This was exactly what he wanted everyone to see, the system rewarding a lie. This moment was crucial for the reaction he wanted to create. He needed the injustice to be clear and public. He needed the villain of the story to be standing in the spotlight, at the peak of his fraudulent glory. It would make his fall from grace all the more dramatic and the subsequent redemption for Kelly all the more powerful. The love story here was one of justice and validation. As Davies stood at the podium, basking in the undeserved adoration, he was at his most arrogant and most vulnerable. He felt untouchable, celebrated, a star within the company. He had no idea he was a pawn in a much larger game, orchestrated by the CEO he so desperately wanted to impress. The surprise that was about to befall him would be swift and absolute, a direct consequence of a destiny he had tempted one too many times. Basking in the warm glow of the stage lights and applause, Mr. Davies felt invincible. He held the award in his hand, a symbol of a victory he hadn't earned. As he began his acceptance speech, his eyes scanned the front row and landed on Kelly Brooklyn. In a moment of supreme arrogance and cruelty, he decided to use his platform not just to celebrate himself, but to deliver one final public blow to the secretary he despised. "I want to thank my team," he began, his voice smooth and confident. "It just goes to show what's possible when you have dedicated people, and what happens when you don't." He paused, a smirk playing on his lips, and then he looked directly at Kelly. "It also teaches us that everyone has their place. Some people are meant to be leaders, and some, well, some people are meant to be a secretary. And it's important to know your place." A wave of shocked silence rippled through the auditorium. The jab was so direct, so personal, and so public that it was breathtakingly cruel. Kelly froze, her face turning crimson. She felt hundreds of pairs of eyes on her. It was a moment of pure, calculated humiliation, designed to make her feel worthless in front of the entire company. She was completely speechless, paralyzed by the sheer malice of his words. This was far beyond a professional dispute. It was a public execution of her dignity. The coup on stage looked deeply uncomfortable. Employees exchanged horrified glances. The manager's attempt to humiliate Kelly was so over the top that it backfired, creating a deeply awkward and emotional tension in the room. He had intended to mock her lowly position, but he only succeeded in exposing his own vile character. He was so blinded by his ego that he didn't sense the shift in the room's atmosphere. But before he could continue his tirade, a new figure emerged from the side of the stage. It was a man in an impeccably tailored suit, walking with an air of quiet, undeniable authority. It was a face no one recognized from the corporate hierarchy, yet he moved as if he owned the very ground he walked on. It was Aaron, but not the humble janitor. This was Aaron King, the CEO, in his full power. The surprise of his appearance was total. Mr. Davies stopped mid-sentence, his jaw dropping. He stared, confused, at the man who was supposed to be cleaning floors. The ultimate plot twist had just walked onto the stage. The hunter was now facetto-faced with a predator he never even knew existed. Kelly's redemption was seconds away, and the manager's public triumph was about to become a legendary corporate disaster. The destiny he had tried to control was about to hand him the bill. Aaron King walked calmly to the center of the stage, taking the microphone from a stunned Mr. Davies. He turned to the audience, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the silent auditorium. For the past month, he began, I have been working in this building. But not as your CEO. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. I've been working as your janitor. A collective gasp swept through the room. The surprise was palpable. He then turned his gaze, cold as ice, to the terrified manager. And in that month, I've learned more about this company than I ever did from a boardroom. He proceeded to expose every lie, every deception. He spoke of the stolen project, the falsified error report, and the shredded documents that proved it all. He revealed Davies' attempt to fire an innocent secretary to cover his own tracks. With every sentence, the manager's face grew paler, his arrogance melting away into pure, unadulterated fear. You speak of people knowing their place, Aaron continued, his voice rising with controlled fury. A man who steals credit, lies to his superiors, and publicly tries to humiliate an employee does not have a place in this company. He looked directly at Davies. You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. The reaction was instantaneous. Davies was speechless, defeated, as two security guards moved towards the stage. It was a swift and brutal redemption for Kelly. Then, Aaron did something no one expected. He turned to Kelly, who was still frozen in her seat, her mind struggling to process the impossible plot twist. His expression softened, and the CEO's authority was replaced by a heart-aching sincerity. Kelly Brooklyn, he said, his voice now gentle. In a company full of ambitious people, your kindness, your integrity, and your courage are the single greatest assets we have. He continued, you didn't just defend a janitor. You defended a human being. You showed more leadership when you were being humiliated than he gestured to the departing manager, showed in his entire career. He walked to the edge of the stage, extending his hand to her. I'm not just clearing your name. I'm offering you a new position, leading a new task force on corporate culture and employee integrity. You will report directly to me. Kelly stared at his outstretched hand, her heart pounding. The entire auditorium erupted in thunderous applause. The emotional journey from humiliation to vindication was complete. This was her destiny. This was the ending to a love story she never knew had begun. She looked at the man who was both the janitor she had befriended and the CEO of her company, and with tears of joy streaming down her face, she was, for the first time in her life, truly and completely speechless. And there you have it. What an emotional and heart-aching journey. We went from a simple act of kindness in a corporate hallway to the painful injustice of seeing someone humiliated, all the way to that final incredible moment of redemption. It's a powerful story about how a secret identity led to an unforgettable plot twist and a reaction that left not only a secretary, but all of us completely speechless. This story is a beautiful reminder that your true value isn't in your job title, but in your character. Kelly Brooklyn had no idea the janitor she defended was the powerful CEO of her company. Her kindness was authentic, offered without any expectation of reward. In the end, it was that integrity, that quiet dignity, that became her destiny and the foundation for a true love story built on respect and admiration. Now, we would love to hear from you. What part of this story impacted you the most? Was it the moment Kelly bravely stood up to her manager? Or maybe it was that final satisfying scene on the stage. Share what you felt in the comments below. We're also curious, did you expect an ending like this? Or did you have a different outcome in mind? We love reading your thoughts on how the story unfolded. If this story resonated with you, please show your support by giving this video a like. It really helps our channel reach more people who need to hear messages like this. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button and turn on all notifications. We have a whole library of past videos for you to binge watch, and you definitely don't want to miss the powerful stories we have coming up next. Thank you for being a part of our community. Until next time.